Afternoon or evening, everybody. Our guest, Dr. Mohan Yang, although he said we should call him Mohan. Mohan's an assistant professor and training specialist in the Department of STEM Education and Professional Studies. That's over at Old Dominion University. He received his PhD in learning design and technology at Purdue University. His research interests focus on organizational training design and workforce development in the era of digital transformation and learning experience design in online environments. First, Mohan, I'm just hoping you can give us some context. We're all here to learn about the interview process. You're an assistant professor now. Can you give us kind of some context as to what kind of interviews you've been doing and what those were like?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I really want to thank you for the invite. I really missed having conversation with all of you guys. And it does feel a little bit different now on the other side, looking at the whole process, right? So not sure whether I caught your question correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong. So in terms of the interviews I've been through since I started the program at Purdue, I've done internships, interviews multiple times. I've done instrument design positions, interviews, postdoc, adjunct, faculty position, and also tenure track now. So every single interview was very different dynamic and different focus, and so that's why you need to prepare for different positions. I believe some of you might target different sectors or maybe different directions upon graduation, right? Whether in industry or academia, or if you're not sure, you're just trying it out. So you definitely need to prepare those accordingly for each of these different positions and tailor every single of them. So yeah, that's just an overall of my prior experience about interviews.
That's a pretty wide range of possible interviews you were running into, since you were looking for a wide range of postings. I have a follow-up question for that, if you're all right with it. You were talking about how each interview was different. For the interview process, were you surprised by that, or from your research or preparation, were you able to kind of expect and predict some of these differences?
Yeah, some of them. I would say I've been through more failures than success, apparently, and so there are always surprises, right? But to really survive this interview process, the multiple rounds of interview process, you have to prepare very well upfront, all different aspects, right? Sometimes it might mean that you have to write specific answers down for some of the questions, like most commonly asked questions. Most of the time, because for different interviews, I prepared a wide range of questions, right? The basic question that they need to get to know me, and also some behavioral related questions, and some of questions that you need to prepare. So by covering all these different, this wide range of interview questions, you should be okay, but always be ready for surprises. And I've been through a lot of surprises that did really bad. Some of those questions threw out to me, which I probably can share later a little bit.
Yeah, we have questions about that. Some people want to know over the curveballs. We have some questions about that, but actually, I'd like to back up even further, just because we have one question that asks about you and your research interests. So this is long before we're actually at the interview for you, but it's kind of where we are now. And the question is, when and how did you discover your research interest or academic curiosity? And how did you nurture that afterwards?
That was a great question, because I always, whenever I talk about my research interest, I always talk to people that I was in a kind of in a status of feeling lost for the first couple of years. I had this K to 12 teaching background, and I thought that I was really interested in online teaching and how to use technology to enhance teaching. And that was something that I was involved in the very beginning, working with my advisor. But later on, I just, not later on, but maybe since in the very beginning, I just didn't feel the passion in that, like just focusing on that, and I was not sure what to look at. And on top of that, another kind of extra layer of pressure is that it felt like people around me know exactly what they were doing, and they have this laser focus, like this is the topic I'm going to work on for the next 3 to 4 years and then graduate. And it was really that kind of peer pressure. It's not like you're trying to compete with others, but it's like you think, at least you thought, like you're supposed to be knowing that what you will be doing for the next several years, or maybe even after graduation. So that was kind of the pressure and the status I was on. And what was really helpful for me to navigate through my own different topics and my own research interests was going to conference. I still remember the first year was in Las Vegas, the ACT 2016. So I went there and basically just fill all my schedule all day long with all different sessions, right? Different topics, and just to try to say what people are doing, right? What experts are doing in this field, and get a sense of what is the trend, and maybe what are the issues, why people are doing such and such. And that was really an eye-opening opportunity for me. That is why nowadays I constantly encourage others, my students and my colleagues, maybe at Purdue, like go to conference, not just for social networking, but also get to know what people are doing, and you will get a sense of, after that, you get a sense of at least what is the training of this field and what you can probably explore a little bit. And that was I did. Right after I came back from my first conference, I started to look into some of these some of these topics, like I got interested in during the conference sessions, such as HPT, Human Performance and Technology. And then starting there, I would just look at all different topics and research articles, and then gradually develop my own research interest in transfer of training. And then that's, starting from there, try to kind of combine that part of the research interest with other different, focuses, and then develop my agenda from there. So I think that was really important. If you cannot go to conference, talk to people, professors in this field, talk to your peers. And one of the most valuable experience for me at Purdue was to talk to my office mates, like Shamila, Ted, right, Evan, all different people around me, right? Maybe starting from at the same time, or people who's 1 year ahead of me, or people who's 1 year or 2 years later than me. You will always get insights from them by talking about their research into what they've been doing. So I think communication with other people and learn from others is important especially for novice researchers.
Thanks for that. That probably explains why I have no idea what I'm doing too. So, the next question we have is getting into the interview process. Did you apply for positions outside of higher ed? And if so, like, how did you prepare for those?
I did. I applied a wide range of job, positions, including industry, instructional designer in higher education, postdocs, and tenure track, and even clinical positions. And I was kind of determined, if I don't get a good maybe tenure track position, I would just go to industry, because at that time I've already got an internship, like kind of returning internship offer, and have the possibility of extending it and then stay there. and I know the team really well after my first year internship with them in Seattle. So I was really clear, at least by the last year, clear like, okay, this is the approach that I will take, like industry and academia. Both, I will just keep my doors open to both of them. And so I ended up applying this different, I remember I applied about over 30 positions. So at that year, which was last year, starting from last fall to the summer, to the spring, most of the positions were frozen. But I still managed to apply about 30 positions, because not just in LDT, not just in IDT in this field, but also in related. And that's one point I think, or maybe one tip that I want to give to everyone. If that position is of interest to you, go for it. I really like one saying from somewhere, from some people. The only job opportunity or position that you have no shot at all is the position that you never applied for, right? So if that's something that there's a piece of that interests you, go for it. And I know a couple of people, for example, a friend from gifted education at Purdue, she ended up being in gifted education. She ended up, assistant professor that is related to her master background, right? I know people coming to our field with different backgrounds. I think that's a good thing, right? At least kind of give you more opportunities from that sense. So try to keep your door open unless you are really the top ones in this field among this cohort that year, right? You're really confident that you really get, I just need to get to tier 1, research 1 institution. But be aware of that you are competing not just with PhDs, people who are from the same cohort, but also postdocs and also assistant professors. And this is super, super common. So yeah, I think that's kind of one suggestion I will give.
Wow, and 30 different applications. That is a lot.
Yeah.
How did you keep track of all that? Like, did you have strategies or tools that you used? Like, how did you keep track of 30 different applications?
So I didn't do that very consistently, but I did have some sort of management approach for myself. First of all, I have a folder for every single university, every single position. I have different folders, organize them on my computer, and also I created two set of spreadsheets. One is for job interview questions, like industry questions, and also academic job questions, and also did some research, listed the most common questions, and answer it up front, and just to get a sense of how to really, you talk to yourself how to answer these questions. But by the time of interview, I don't suggest you just read through your script, even though I strongly recommend you to write on some of the key points, but don't read from script, especially like a Zoom meeting, right? People will see. So I had one spreadsheet for job interview questions specifically, and also I had another spreadsheet for to track the position applied, and also whether I got an interview and who are the people that interviewed me, whether I followed up yet, whether I got the offer, so such and such, just to kind of give myself an idea, like where I was at during that process.
Did you use your portfolio at all? We had a question about that. Catherine says, could you talk about the role or importance of a portfolio in your interviews?
Do you mean the portfolio that we developed in our program, the website?
That's how I took it to mean, Catherine. You could put that in the chat. It's a correction, but yeah, that's what I understood it to be.
Okay. Yes, I didn't send. I included the link in my CV. So right on top of my CV, like after my contact information, I included my website. So I strongly recommend you to purchase the domain. For example, to make it professional, like mine is, I forgot, mohanyang.com. So buy the domain and then link it to your portfolio. And also at the end of the CV, I remember I have a QR code, just in case people want to scan and that lead them directly to my portfolio web page. I don't know whether they do that or whether they viewed my portfolio, but I don't want to send them like too many separate materials. So I just include, I think the most important materials, especially in the very beginning, is the cover letter and CV, right? That's the two material that people will look at and then generate their long short list.
Even if they didn't scan your QR code, I think in a ed tech, session, it doesn't hurt to show them that you have a QR code of your website. So that sounds cool. Awesome. We had a question about the response rate. So what was the response rate for the number of applications that you sent versus how many interview calls that you actually got?
The response rate, okay. Can you repeat the question? The response rate of what?
Yeah, as written, it says, what is the response rate of number of applications versus interview calls that you experienced? You said you had like 30 applications that you sent out, right?
Yeah.
How many of those turned into interviews?
Let's see. So at least for the first round, I think I had about 5 to 7 interviews. But most of them just nothing. So because again, I applied for positions that I'm not a good fit. I know that, but at that point, I think at least to some extent you are a little bit desperate, right? You want to, grab as many things as possible, opportunities as possible. So like higher education and teacher education. Those I applied. I believe I had a strong background in that as well, considering my own background and my own experience. But most of them I just didn't get an interview opportunity. But I still, like for my current position, it's a training specialist. It's not in our field, right? Not at all. But the people they interviewed for, at least for the final, are all from PALDT. So they want people to have that background, right? So yeah, let me see. The ratio probably 7-1 for me, for my case.
I would totally take that. You're downplaying it. I think
And
that's
also,
I don't know what the industry standard is.
I don't know either. So just for my case, it's probably 7-1. And I think nowadays it's getting more and more competitive, right? Like for one position, like for my position, I think they receive about 100 application. It's very normal for a lot of other, and even like higher in like humanities or different field. But in our field, I think about 100 applicants for one position is pretty normal. They will probably have like 20 of each for first round of screening interview. And then I think the most important thing is get your foot in the door, like one foot in the door to get the interview. So to me, interview mattered most, just in my case, because they do not, all they knew was my material, like written materials, right? And I think the interview was the perfect opportunity for them to get to know you. And I believe you have other questions related to like the real process of interview. So go for it.
Yeah, I do. I the first one, before we get into actual questions, a few people had questions about the questions. But one that's about still for the application process, our last one. A lot of positions want to see learning experience, often 3 years at least. So how would you suggest new graduates get a job or work with that expectation?
I think that was one effort that I was doing at Purdue in my program. That was why I got my master first, took a couple of more courses, and then got internship to get more like real world experience. A lot of the projects are in this, higher education, in this kind of like not a bubble, but it's sometimes a little bit away from what people are really doing in the industry, right? So the first well, you need to get some sort of experience first of all, especially for job positions need your some level of experience. I would suggest you, if you don't have time for internship, I would suggest you to do some kind of like take advantage of some projects and combine that, no, kind of marry that project with your assignments. You have to do the assignments regardless, right? Don't waste that time. Do some real world projects and reach out to people to volunteer. I think Predicom of our one of the course program is a very good one. Like you reach out to a real client and work on something, and then that kind of fulfill the credit. I think similar to that example, like you can for sure work on some real projects while fulfilling the credits hours. That's one. Because people love volunteers and they want to have your input, especially master student, a PhD student. They definitely want you. And try to reach out to people. Like even just within our program, you guys know like how many projects have been going on, right? Design all different kind of projects for different clients, getting grants like for different projects. So get involved in those, even though it means that you have to spend a couple of hours every week on those and get some experience, hands-on experience. I think that's one thing. Another thing is as I been doing, I try to encourage people who have that industry inspiration, the industry inspiration to get some internship, just during the summer or maybe in the fall to get some internship experience, and especially if you can get into. I mean nowadays the internship position they don't want you to just pour coffee, like make coffee or whatever. You are involved in real project. I think that's very important. I reach out to, I mentioned going to conference, right? Reach out to people. Like there are people from industry and even instructional designers from different institutions, and reach out to them. Hey, do you have any project or do you need internship? I did ask people in my first year, and people say, hey, contact me right after this. And I think those are great opportunities for you to really explore some of the potential experience opportunities. And once you get into the job market without too much experience, while working on a PhD degree or master's degree on data, you can still count like some of the experience into years. Like if you're a PhD student, right, you're not working full-time on design. But some level, right, if you are 5 years in PhD, you're doing design work from time to time, you can count it as 1 to 2 years, and you can always reach out to the higher manager or the search committee chair, say, hey, this is my situation. And even though I don't have a full-time design or e-learning development experience, but I've been constantly involved on different projects that is related to that. Do you think I should apply? And sometimes they have a very strict rule that you have to have 3 full years industry experience. And that's something you cannot do about, right? You don't need to waste your time on that position. So, yeah.
Okay, so I guess it all counts, internships and everything. I think
everything.
Also, it's probably a little true that if they say 3 years, it doesn't mean they won't even look if you have less. Like
right.
They probably still look, right?
Right.
Okay. Then yeah, that feels good, because I don't, if they're asking for something and you say, oh, I didn't do that, they want 3 years, it's hard to go back in time and get that. So
cool. Especially in the interview, you don't want to say like, okay, I don't have it. You need to sell your strengths, right? But you don't lie. You have to showcase that you have those experience related to that job position. It's not the traditional way. So be honest, but try to market, advertise yourself.
Okay. Mohan, we have questions about the questions. We have a couple of them. The first one is, what's a question that you weren't expecting interviewers to ask, and how did you tackle it?
So many. I have a lot of like bad examples from me. I remember that I don't want it to be recorded, but I remember that one of the interviews they asked me, okay, just right now, just explain one concept to me, to someone who is not, who does not have that background knowledge. I kind of went blank. Like I have no idea. If you tell me like, okay, explain this, probably it would be better. But I was like, okay, how about a 3D printer? That was the first thing came into my mind. I couldn't think of other thing. And my example, like explanation was really bad. Like it's like conceiving a baby and give birth to it. So I always regretted like saying stuff like this. And also there was a interview question thrown at me by a graduate student. She asked me to provide 3 points. I forgot exactly what it was, but I stopped at 2, and I just couldn't think about the third one. So I didn't. I said, okay, that's where I got now. I will tell you if I think of another point. So my point is, don't panic if you come across a hard question, right? Take a breath and tell them like, okay, give me a minute, give me a second. Let me just think about it. Try to calm yourself down. I tend to be getting excited more than nervous when I go to interviews. And that's an issue for me. Like I need to calm myself down so that I can think, I can progress, process all this information in my mind. So yeah, I guess that'll be my advice. So, and it's okay if you messed up with one question. Right? They won't just judge you on that one single question. So especially for the first round of interview, they have so many people. They won't just remember the single one. You evaluate based on, how you overall showcase yourself. Especially like if you cannot understand the question as a non-native speaker, which happened to me multiple times. It's okay to ask for clarification. Just ask them, okay, can you paraphrase your question, right? Or can you speak that again? I misunderstood one question during my interview for this position and I answered very differently. And then the chair was like, okay, my question was actually this. I said, oh, sorry, I misunderstood you. And then I just kind of pull myself back to that question. So it's okay. And especially if you're an international student and people know, they will have that expectation that if you don't understand one single question, it's okay, just clarify. In normal life, you can just laugh at it. But in interview, you have to answer exactly what they ask. Or they were saying, you don't know this, you just, yeah.
Okay. If I could put you on the spot and give you a couple interview questions, not to make you go through that process again, but one of our survey respondents wanted to know how you would answer a couple questions. The first one is, what working environment do you prefer? And the second is, tell us something about yourself in addition to those things listed in the documents. So how would you handle those? And let me know if you want to just take one at a time or answer them both.
Sure. So for the work environment, I think that's a very common question like asked by either industry and academia. This is normally like in the first round of like screening or Zoom conference interview. They are now trying to test you because you only have 30 minutes. They don't want to waste anything because at most they will ask 10 questions for these 30 minutes. People will take turn ask you different questions. Every single question matters and they have a purpose. And the reason they ask you what kind of work environment you like to work in is to know whether you're a good fit to them, right? My very first suggestion for you is to get to know the program culture. Get to know, there are tons of ways to, this is a really small world like we are in, like PALDT, right? Maybe in the audience you might from a different field, but it's a small field. If you constantly go to conference, meet people, meet with professionals, and you will know people. So you will figure out a way to at least get to know the program, the department, If you don't know anyone personally, the website is a perfect place for you to check, their LinkedIn, any kind of source. You can get to know the people and to know their research, their projects, and also how people work with each other. So get to know the culture so that you can tailor your answer to that, but if you don't know, you don't want to risk it. Like, you just kind of like a spectrum, you just prefer that, and then you're out, right? If they don't have that kind of, for example, support, or you are not a good fit. So try to be neutral in your answer. Like, you can see I've been working in different working environment, such as, for example, such and such, right? Very collaborative or independent, or full of support, or environment that is no support at all, and manage that well. And for this position, I'm really flexible. I am able to adapt to the work environment in your department. So try to be neutral and flexible from that sense. And you want to demonstrate your strengths. You don't want to bring up your weakness. I had an experience, a failure experience. I brought up one issue that I came across in my work, and I thought I could manage it, but I didn't. So that was kind of a red flag for me. So that's my answer to the work environment. For getting the other question was get to know more about you, right?
Beyond something about you that's not
maybe on CV. So you want to talk about something that is related to the position. So speaking of the position, you have to know how the position is come into being, right? They start the job listing. So normally the position is coming out in the fall, but behind this thing, they started a year ahead, right? Putting things together, getting approval from upper management. And by the time they interview you, the job description might not be exactly what they need for their department, for their program. So that's why just now I encourage you to connect with people, get to know what they really want, rather than just based on the job description. But most of the time, study the job description and get to know it, what they want, and relate your answer to that. You don't want to tell them, okay, for me, I'm a good dancer. I love to do such and such. That doesn't really add any value to that. What I was saying. So yeah, just related to the question, and then in the meantime, show your strengths. Like, for example, leadership, team management, grant writing, right? Especially research based, especially for tenure track position. For example, in my CV, I listed several grant writing experience, but I didn't go into deep. So in this case, I probably would say okay, one of the grant experience that I listed was my role. If you can tell a story, very shortly, to attract them, and in the meantime show your strengths, I think that would be perfect. There's no better or worse response, good or wrong answer. It's just how you show, how you want them to get to know you more, that is related to the position, that shows your qualification. That's my take from that question.
Mohan, we have one more question from the survey that we had, if you're still up for it, and then we'll do Q&A after. How you doing so far?
Go for it. Yeah. I really
all right.
Conversation so far.
Last survey question is, what were the unexpectedly difficult moments during the interview?
Unexpected difficult moments. I think I touched on that a little bit just now. For example, you cannot understand the questions exactly, and you went kind of off track, kind of derail a little bit, and that's okay. And maybe you can even confirm with them, okay, did I answer your question correctly? Or if not, you can always provide more. I think that's one, Another one is when you are not well prepared. I think that will. I had several interviews. I thought like, okay, I've done quite a few, and I know how to do that. I didn't want to prepare, and that kind of threw me out during that process. And people asked questions that I didn't prepare at all, and I didn't know what to say at that moment. It's kind of a ramble around, and people will tell whether you're prepared. And imagine if you are a recruiter and your interviewee didn't even prepare for this question, or just rambling around, and you know whether that person will be a good fit, right? So yeah, unexpected, difficult moments. What else? If I think of anything, I will follow up on that.